how do you build an agency that allows you to live the dream that you have for yourself, for your family, for your community, for your team, while at the same time helping your clients knock it out of the park and doing it all profitably? These are the big questions that we tackle here on the Agency Journey podcast. I am your host, Andrew Dembski. Now let's get to it.
All right, welcome into another week of Agency Journey. This is Gray, and this week on the podcast, I have the privilege of bringing on Felipe Zorzi. I feel like I messed that up already, Felipe, but welcome to the podcast anyways.
Hi, Gray. That's all good. Good. No worries.
So say your last name for everyone with the right emphasis on like Zul on the first part. I feel like it's the emphasis on the first part of the name that messes me up.
Yeah, it's Zorzi. Felipe Zorzi. It's pretty hard. Even for my friends here in Brazil, it's pretty hard, so don't worry.
That's funny. And then, so the agency that you're with, which in the U.S. looks like GDM, but you guys say, well, not you guys say, the correct pronunciation, Agencia
GDM. It's almost the same.
Yeah. Agencia
it's similar.
GDM.
Yeah, Agencia. Yeah. It's funny to hear you speaking in Agencia in English.
I'm sure. That's hilarious. So, walk us through kind of how you got into the agency space and where things are at now with the agency.
All right. So to make a long story short, I built my career in global communication groups like WPP and BBDO, always working with global brands and global projects. I also worked a couple of years as a product manager on a Brazilian weekly magazine named Veja. It was a great experience. Yeah, it's the second weekly magazine of the road, I guess, right after Times.
Wow.
And it was a great experience there, for sure. I was on the other side of the counter as a client.
Yep.
And I guess that would be all before I decided to open GDM. And I would say the decision to do it, to start the agency, was quite simple. During all the time working with big brands and big companies, mostly advertising, paid advertising, quite often I had friends of mine who were opening a business or who had a business already, asking me questions like, what name should I give to my company or to my new product? Can you help me designing my logo and so forth? And when I managed to help each one of these friends, I must say that I felt a lot of joy. It was like real happiness to me, and much more happiness than I felt when I finished a TV commercial or a print ad, for example. So those good moments always kept in my mind, and by the end of 2013, the Golden Circle concept crossed my way, and man, that was really life-changing. I watched it over and over and over, I guess 100 times, and I felt that was time to make a change. I felt that was time to open my own agency. So after that, I found GDM with a partner, Hina, who is still my partner and is in charge for the creative department. And later on, Ricardo joined us, leading the strategy and digital initiatives.
Wow. What a journey. So as far as the type of projects that you're doing right now, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on is because I know that you guys do a ton of branding, and you already that was a big part of your story to even start this. But as far as the kind of breakdown and servicing of the types of services that you're offering right now, and what you do most frequently, what does the service breakdown look like at the agency?
Yeah. So besides branding, and branding includes deliverables as from the very beginning of the process. So the concept, the manifesto, the brand architecture, positioning, naming, logo, graphic materials, so forth. The second front of service would be customer experience, and that would include mostly inbound, but also paid advertising campaigns.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense. Yeah. So as far as kind of the breakdown between those two, now it seems to me like the branding and design piece, there's like some elements. There's obviously building out some of the materials in the future that makes sense, but I think of it more as like a project with a limited time frame. Obviously, there's versus like inbound, at least for a lot of agencies, is kind of synonymous or put in place with like a longer term. We're running active campaigns alongside you. Same thing with paid advertising. As far as kind of the breakdown in maybe into like revenue buckets or in terms of how you guys are spending your internal time, are you spending a lot more time on the branding projects, or are you spending more time on the marketing side of things?
Yeah, I would say that's 50-50. We love doing branding, but as you just say, it has a limited time frame. So usually we stay with the client for 3 months, at most 4 months. And then sometimes it's not guaranteed. After a year, he comes back to us to continue the work with an inbound strategy. So this limitation obviously made us along the way to start this second front of service that could guarantee clients on the long term, clients for a year.
Right.
So I would say right now we are 50-50.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. As far as the branding process itself, if we could dive into that, someone comes to you. How are people presenting that need to you to start off? Are they coming saying, I need a brand and I heard you were the guys? Or are they coming saying, we don't really know what we're doing? Is it typically a rebrand of organizations, or a company coming to you for the first time during like the startup phase where they're trying to name it? What does that look like?
Yeah, so if it's a startup company, they will probably come to us to build from scratch. So they have nothing. Right. They basically know what is the project, what is the service that they are launching, but they ask us to create since the concept, the name, the logo, and so forth. But the methodology that we created here is adaptable according to the company's needs. So if it is an established company, sometimes the challenge is different. So we had a prospect this week that the only challenge that they had was to find their purpose. So they were not interested in changing their names. They were not interested in rebranding, redesigning. They needed to find the purpose. They just don't need what to say when people ask, why you do what you do. Mm-hmm. So the methodology is pretty much adaptable for all different kinds of companies and moments.
That makes sense. So someone comes in, and maybe this is like we'll just use the example maybe of somebody coming to you, and I don't know if this is not the best example or not a common example. Maybe we pick a different one, but someone comes to you with a business that's in existence already, with a brand that's out there, but they want to rebrand for whatever reason. What does the process, how do you take folks through that process? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I guess for us, it's very important. I would say that the step number one before even start the partnership would be to believe in the client's business or the client's idea, or I know that we won't do a great job. So before even start working with a startup or a company that already exists, I often ask the clients, why do you believe that your business are so relevant for other people? What kind of impact you are willing to cause? This kind of questions makes me feel if it will be a good fit. Because, if they can convince me, if I don't buy the idea, then I know that a branding project won't work well for us. On the other hand, when we buy it, we know we'll be able to do a great job. So, an example, we were recently chosen to develop a branding project for a huge energy and infrastructure company that exists, a group called PATAC here in Brazil. They're from the south of the south of the country. And they are opening a new business in the clean energy segment, starting with wind power, wind energy. So that's an amazing idea, an amazing project. We truly believe in that. It makes sense to work on stuff like that. We know that this has the power to make the world a better place for our children to future generations. So I would say the step number one in the process is to feel that it is a good idea. It has an impact, and we would recommend it to our family.
Right. I think that's a good test. Now, I think what might be tricky here, might be helpful to understand is most of that happening. It sounds like most of that is probably, my guess is that most of that is probably happening pre-sales before there's actually, here's the contract and the client has paid you, or is that actually happening in a first step as your kind of understanding of the client and being convinced that you believe in the idea?
No, that's definitely pre-sales. I would say that doing this for a lot of years, the first 30 minutes of conversation, I know that it's, I just know.
Right.
I just know.
I think, and this is probably different with different size businesses, but with a lot of like having those conversations with a lot of owners, you just figure out very quickly whether someone actually believes in what they're doing and if they're really passionate about it or not by the way that they talk about it. And I don't think, I think there's like sometimes just relying on your gut. Now that doesn't necessarily mean there's more obviously that I'm sure you dig into and that you need to dig into to figure out just because they believe in it doesn't mean that you believe in it. But understanding whether if someone else doesn't believe in it, it's going to be very hard to get anybody convinced that is a good solution or a good product or a good business. So that's helpful to kind of understand that on the front, like this is happening pre-sales. Moving forward from there, what happens next?
Yeah, so the other point that I would say that it's crucial for successful branding project is to start with the strategy and also put the client in the center of the process. When a company hires a branding project, they definitely looking for strategy, planning, good quality information for them to be able to make important decisions of their own business. So otherwise, they would be hiring only a designer. Though very often the phone rings here at GDM with people asking us to create a logo, and I get back and say we don't do logo, we do branding project. It's quite different. So strategy is the first part of the process. So we start with a huge immersion into the client's business. We spend an entire week with interviews. If it's a startup, usually we talk to the founder, and we have a script to make this first interview with the founder, and then we go deep into competition, the category, and other reference. If it is an established company, besides the founder or the CEO, we also have a workshop that we do with the board of directors. So we bring in the directors. It is very important. So it's not only top down, it's both ways. So strategy would be the first step with this immersion, these interviews, and the output of it would be first the why, how, and what. Mm-hmm. Second, the brand manifesto. Third, the positioning.
Okay, so you're creating all of the kind of the underlying, the foundation messaging before moving into any of the actual design. You know, like here's how we're putting together the logo or the some of the brand assets that they need.
Yeah, no, that absolutely. Otherwise, we would be doing anything. The designing output would be the same for any sort of company.
Right.
That's why we need this time to go into the heart, into the minds of the people who are leading the company, who are working there, and extract all the good things from there, and then make it a good and a good design project, a good naming project, and so forth.
Right. That makes sense. So, in terms of timeline here, you mentioned like we've got a week long process. Maybe that's condensed a little bit if it's a younger or smaller company. Maybe it's expanded a little bit. What is the timeline from we're starting the project to we have the assets that you mentioned, the manifesto and the why, how, and what, and those pieces? Is that like within a 2 week span, or is that a longer time frame from when you actually get the interviews, get the information out of them, to how that gets condensed and goes through the process to create the ultimate messaging?
Yeah, this usually happens in the first month. So we have a 4 week sprint, making all these strategy alignments before we start the creative stage.
Okay, that makes sense. So then once that's built out, is that the point at which you're rolling into like building out the logo? And I don't know how much goes in. It might be helpful to also understand, is this like we're creating, do you start with a logo? Do you start with a style guide and then build the logo based on that? How does that all come together?
Yeah, actually, well, it depends on the client. So if it's a startup, we'll probably start with the name, which I usually say that is like creating the name of your son,
Yep.
because it is as important as that. So the first step would be the name, and it's crystal clear for us that we should bring the client into this process from the very beginning. They actually enjoy interacting uh, with the process. So when it comes to presenting the name, for example, we print and paste all the names and its rationales on the wall here at the agency,
Mm-hmm.
and then the client decides which ones stays on the wall and which ones go to the trash. So he does that until he came up alone with the winner. So he's the one deciding the name of his children, not us. That's a part of the process that we feel that adds value when the client is interacting and helping us moving forward with the project. So I'm not pushing anything to him. He's there with us in a presence meeting, uh, doing all that thinking on the names with us. So it's
Right.
kind of funny.
That's that's an intense process going through the naming process. So are you typically taking all the research, kind of going back, and the agency compiling a list of ideas, and then obviously I'm sure in at least in most cases probably running it against what's already trademarked, or what's already where the domains available or not available, or what would getting some of the assets look like for these pieces? Are you guys creating most of those, or is it more common for your clients to come to you with, here's some ideas that we had, and you work off of and iterate that? How does that, and I'm sure there's probably a mix of those that might happen, but how does that process go down during the naming phase?
Yeah, I would say that most part of the time we build it from zero. So he doesn't have the name, and then we have a methodology to the naming stage, which starts with briefing, an online briefing document that we send to the client. So he fill it in, and then from that we do debrief documents with everything that we understand, like what sort of territories the client would like to be, if the name would be more, how would I say that in English, like more descriptive or more
Hmm.
abstract.
Mm-hmm.
So we have this document to understand what the client has in his mind, and then we get back to him with everything we understood from that. So this is the document that goes to the creative department. So all the info that they need to start building the name is over there, already aligned with the client. So they usually now getting into the creative stage. They usually goes into I would say like 200 names that it comes from all different universe that you can imagine. Depends on the client's business, obviously. But after that, the creative team does their own, their first, how would I say, their first shortlist.
Mm-hmm.
So they separate around 40 to 50 names, and we then paste all the names on the walls, the walls of GDM, and we do like an internal brainstorming and come up with a final short list of 20 names. So this is the number that we usually of names that we usually present to the clients, 20, not more than that. But before the presentation and getting to your question, we do some research. Basically, we look for three points at this stage. The first one is if there is any other company in the same segment with the same name. Mm-hmm. And in case it does, we just withdraw it from the shortlist and we won't present it. The second point we look is the domain, if it's available, if we can register, or if not, what is the solution for that? Sometimes the client is very concerned about the domain, if it's available, and sometimes this is the most important criteria for him to choose the name. Mm-hmm. And the third point would be the legal part. If a lawyer could be able to register, here in Brazil we call it INPE. Okay. This is the place, the process that they usually register the namings, the trading part of it. So we do like a high level research at INPE at this stage. It's not, we don't go very deep into the research, but a high level already shows to us if it's a green or a yellow or a red light.
Right. Some idea of what's there. That's really helpful to kind of have it broken down and just understanding those different criterias. Felipe, are there any other, so this is a super complex process. I've got a ton of questions I could ask, but
yeah, we're almost over.
But are there any other kind of major points from any lessons that you guys have learned in the branding process that would be helpful to share with folks?
Yeah, so being very brief, shortly, I would say that pay attention to the amount of work you show to the client in every step. So don't present more than 20 naming options, and don't present more than 3 logo options.
So don't overwhelm them, basically.
Yeah, don't overwhelm them. This is about leading the process, leading the client's journey inside the agency, make them feel confident about their decision. And finally, I would say that have fun along the way. So we usually don't celebrate the good work that we do, the great ideas that we have becoming real business. So the message would be value all the deliverables, from the planning to the graphic materials. It is important to show to the client that you and your team, the agency, is enjoying the work, enjoying working with him, that you are having fun along the way. So when it happens, the client, go ahead.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, is just is there anything in your process that's kind of built in to do that? Or is that more of just a cultural thing? How do you communicate that to the client without it just coming off as like cheesy or fake friendliness or anything, or like the fake celebration, but actual like, is there anything built into the process that's meant to
Yeah,
help keep the client excited along the way?
now with the Do Inbound system, we have process for everything, my friend.
That's awesome.
So
What is that? I guess specifically, and I didn't mean to set you up for Do Inbound there, but what is there anything specifically, like, is this during meetings or on calls? I guess, how do you communicate that sense of, like, we're moving in the right direction? Because I think like, having gone through this process, and maybe it's just because I didn't have as good of a process as you had to go through this process. But momentum starts to die out along the way, and, like, it feels like it's dragging on, at least in a couple cases that I've gone through this on projects. And so I think it is important to have. I think what you're saying is, like, this is a golden point that people need to realize is your job is not just a cheerleader. It's way beyond that. But your job is partially a cheerleader to keep the momentum going and to keep things. A big part of what people are paying for is the experience here. So anything specifically that you guys do to kind of communicate that?
Yeah, it's quite simple. So when you have a name approved, we have an email that usually the product manager of the job sends to the client, saying that the name is, and valuing all the naming process, everything that the client went through with us, and now that we have that part done, what will be the next stage of the journey. So we created this template for the moment that the client approves the name and the logo and the other stuff. So I guess one part of it that is very important is to break the process into very small pieces. So as I said, it's a 3-month project. So it is important to have a weekly interaction with the clients during this whole period. So the client will feel that the work is flowing. He will see things going on. So we have this moment that we celebrate, like a name approved or a logo approved. And we also have daily routines that we just say to the client, oh, this is finished. Now we're working on that, and have the client on board with us.
That makes a ton of sense, and I think that's where at Guava Box, with probably the first 3 different retainer clients that we had, and with a lot of website projects early on, that was like the biggest missing piece. We were doing a ton of work on the back end and never communicating that to the client, so they feel like nothing's happening. We feel like we're working super hard, and, like, all it is it just comes down to communication and just, like, the culture of do we have a process, and are we consistently keeping the client in tune with what's actually happening, because we are making progress here. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's it.
Wow. Well, Felipe, this is a lot of nuggets in here. There's a lot more I'm sure that we could dive into, but this has been really helpful and valuable. I appreciate you being willing to come on and share. So obviously we'll link up the website in the show notes for this, but is there any other place to point people to follow either you or the agency?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so you guys can find me over there, Felipe Zorzi, and by email, but try LinkedIn. I'm always there.
Okay. That's awesome. Okay. Well, we'll definitely include that in the show notes then. Felipe, thanks so much for being willing to share and coming on, man. Much appreciated.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Want more great episodes like this one? Hey, I'm Gray McKenzie, a host here on Agency Journey. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get a little overwhelmed when I find a new podcast. There are so many great episodes and great guests, it's hard to know which ones to listen to first. That's why we put together a list of the top 10 most downloaded episodes of Agency Journey, and you can get a copy of that list plus all of our notes and takeaways just by texting the word Do Inbound to 44222. Again, that's Do Inbound, all one word, to 44222. Standard text rates apply. You don't want to miss these great episodes. Text Do Inbound to 44222 now.